Some of you may be about to get what you've been asking for with Bobby Wagner potentially sidelined this weekend.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in the world. I am David Harrison, your guy on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, also writing for Commanders on SI. You can follow me on X at DHarrison82. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to talk about the key to controlling the game in Minnesota this weekend. We're also going to talk about the potential of Jayden Daniels returning for the matchup. But first, we are going to talk about Jordan Magee potentially getting the opportunity to step up, and some of you getting what you've been asking for with Bobby Wagner on the sidelines this weekend, potentially happening as we reach the end of the week here. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets across the app. Some of you have been asking for this for a while. You've wanted to see Bobby Wagner on the sideline in favor of Jordan Magee. And if current trends continue into Friday and into the weekend, you may just get what you've asked for all this time because of an injury. Linebacker Bobby Wagner has been nursing a knee injury all week at Washington Commanders practice, did not participate on Wednesday, did not participate on Thursday. We'll see what happens on Friday, but if he does not participate again on Friday, then it's going to lend even more thought into the possibility that Bobby Wagner doesn't play. If that happens, then Jordan Magee would be the next in line to step up in his spot as a starting off-ball linebacker. And I talked to at least one Commanders defender who does believe that Jordan Magee would not only start in place of Bobby Wagner, but Jordan Magee would also wear the communicator set the defense for the Washington Commanders. We'll get more information from Dan Quinn Friday afternoon on that. And of course, we'll get more information visually from practice Friday afternoon, early Friday afternoon, on whether or not Bobby Wagner is out there. Defensive end Drake Jackson was also activated off of the injured reserve list. However, he was non-participant at practice Wednesday and Thursday with that knee/groin injury that he had when the Washington Commanders brought him in. So I don't expect to see him for a while. I mean, I'm not sure we're going to see him at all this season, to be quite honest with you. We'll just have to see. If he does play at all this season, great. But even when he was brought into the team, it always kind of looked at as a move for the future, right? So just an update on him as well. But let's talk about this Bobby Wagner, Jordan Magee thing, because with Bobby Wagner, you're not just replacing a starting linebacker, you're replacing the most consistent tackler of his time. Bobby Wagner recently just became the second player since 2000 to record 100-plus tackles in 14 consecutive seasons. The other linebacker that did that, Washington legend London Fletcher. So that's the grouping, that's the company that Bobby Wagner has put himself in his career. Bobby Wagner has 115 tackles this year alone with 5 games left to play. Losing him not only takes away that consistent presence in the middle of the field, but also takes away, we've talked about this, the leadership and the coach on the field aspect of it. Not only is he the guy that receives the defensive play call, gets everybody set, gets everybody organized, but he also helps in large part making the checks and the adjustments after the play has been called in. That is something that experience, that veteran leadership really brings to the forefront. And there's actually a play specifically against the Denver Broncos last weekend that really just kind of shows that ability. And it came on a critical third down in the game that the Washington Commanders needed to get a stop against the Denver Broncos defense. And Bobby Wagner was able to recognize the play, recognize the formation, understanding the situation, moved up, told Jacob Martin, who was on a blitz call originally, to back out of his blitz, drop off into coverage. Jacob Martin gets that information from Bobby Wagner, says, I got you. The ball is snapped. Jacob Martin drops into coverage, ends up right into the passing lane that Bo Nix was trying to target, gets the pass defense, gets the pass broken up. The Washington Commanders get the ball, eventually tie the game, send the game into overtime. That is the kind of stuff that you're looking for from Bobby Wagner. That video has been shared online on social media with a breakdown. So if you want to find it, you can find it and see exactly what I'm talking about. That's the kind of thing that Jordan Magee simply can't be expected to do. Now, his football IQ is something that we've talked about in previous episodes and in previous observations of Jordan Magee, going all the way back to his rookie season in training camp, where he really started to first shine. He started to shine because of obviously his speed, his athleticism, but also being in the right place at the right time. You can see him pursuing a gap, making a read, recognizing a play, dropping off into coverage, or maybe adjusting his pursuit, whatever he needed to do to be in the right place. So Jordan Magee's football IQ has been demonstrated time and time again in these practice scenarios. We've seen him flash at times in games as well, and the more experience he gets, the better off he's going to be, obviously. However, you can't possibly replace all the experience Bobby Wagner has with the limited experience Jordan Magee has. It's just not fair to expect from Jordan Magee, and it's just not fair to in respect to Bobby Wagner. So if you see Jordan Magee on the field this weekend, obviously, honestly, even if Bobby Wagner plays, you may see more Jordan Magee than we've seen in quite a while. And because of that injury, because of maybe some rep management, or if the game gets out of hand one way or the other, at some point you just may see him get pulled just to maintain his body and his health and all that kind of stuff moving down the road. There's a lot of different avenues that the Washington Commanders can obviously take here. And then there, of course, comes also the balance of wanting to win now, wanting to develop for the future. Dan Quinn asked about that earlier this week, said, quote, "I do want to see both winning now, but also the development of some others, seeing Magee get extended reps, etc." End quote. Was something that he said. There's something about this, Jordan Magee has a little bit of a quarterback background, gives him a little bit of ability to see the field from a different type of angle. So Jordan Magee, again, certainly some unique abilities and possibilities here. And this is, you hate to see it come because of injury, obviously, right? But when you're talking about the development of Jordan Magee, like, not for nothing, but Bobby Wagner didn't have all this experience, didn't have all this knowledge from all the games and the reps that he's played throughout his career when he joined the league, right? Bobby Wagner had a first rep. Bobby Wagner had a first play call, all these kinds of things to get to where he is today. So Jordan Magee, and I'm not saying Jordan Magee is ever going to be Bobby Wagner, but if Jordan Magee is going to be a starting linebacker in the NFL, starting linebacker for this team, if he's ever going to reach that type of ceiling, he's got to have a first rep. He's got to have a first game. He's got to have a first call. He's got to have a first mistake as well. And he's got to have a first scenario where he showcases his IQ and really helps out. The question that you come into play this weekend specifically to just this game is, if that's Jordan Magee coming up to Jacob Martin saying, "Hey, Jake, I see something, drop off into coverage, don't blitz." Does Jacob Martin listen to him? One, and does Jordan Magee see it first? Like, that's first foremost, right? But then he sees it, he makes the adjustment, he goes up to Jacob Martin and says, "Hey, dude, don't blitz, drop off into coverage instead." Jacob Martin, being a veteran, does he listen to Jordan Magee, or does he say, "Nah, bro, I'm going to blitz, I'm going to go get this quarterback," and he goes in there, and then, of course, we know what happens there. That is obviously something, like, on the surface, you would like to say, "Hey, dude, that guy's got the green dot. He's setting the defense. You need to listen to his checks if he makes the check. And, if it's wrong, then he'll learn and develop, and we'll move on from there." But the bottom line truth of the matter is, vets have an established pecking order. They have a little bit of more leeway, things like that. Like, if that's Von Miller and Jordan Magee saying, "Hey, Von, come out here and do this." And then, of course, there's also the question, is Jordan going to try to tell Von, "Hey, don't do what you're supposed to do something different," and expect him to listen as well. So there's a little bit of different things. But again, with the playoffs, not mathematically, technically out of reach, but very logically out of reach, this isn't a bad time for Jordan Magee to get his first reps as that off-ball linebacker, potentially setting the defense. Let Bobby Wagner rest that knee, especially if he plans on playing into the future. Don't risk further injury or worse injury that could cost him the rest of the end of his career. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. There are, of course, some other ramifications. Jordan Magee is out there instead of Bobby Wagner. How does that impact the matchup, specifically relating to wide receiver Justin Jefferson? That and more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you in part by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. So on Sunday, if Jordan Magee does get the start over Bobby Wagner dealing with that knee injury, maybe you want to keep an eye on Justin Jefferson, see how he's running over the middle, see if he's getting a lot of catches over there. Maybe he gets 3 catches in the first quarter over the middle because of Jordan Magee being on the field. And you say, "Man, want to see Jordan Magee do better, but at the same time, want to make a little bit of cash. So let me hit the live in-game bet on Justin Jefferson getting 6+ catches." That's kind of how this whole thing works. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. If Jordan Magee is the starting off-ball middle linebacker for the Washington Commanders this weekend, if Bobby Wagner is on the sideline like so many have wanted to see earlier this season, there is a potential that Justin Jefferson, one of, if not the best wide receiver in the National Football League, can take advantage of that shorthanded defense and exploit it to hit the record books on Sunday. Justin Jefferson, hopefully I didn't say Jordan Magee, Justin Jefferson, Minnesota Vikings wide receiver, is chasing a little bit of history. He needs 145 receiving yards to pass Randy Moss for the most receiving yards by any player in his first 6 seasons in NFL history. Obviously, Randy Moss, Minnesota Vikings legend, so Justin Jefferson certainly wants to be able to achieve that. And if the middle of the field is more open because of the loss of Bobby Wagner, that is a situation they might be able to pursue there. As far as like the Randy Moss hat trick, he needs just 3 games of 100-plus receiving yards to pass Moss. Obviously, this is only 1 game, so he's not going to do that this weekend. And he only needs 8 catches to pass Jarvis Landry for the most receptions in a player's first 6 seasons. So Washington Commanders, 31st pass defense, even with Bobby Wagner in there and that intelligence and that on-field coaching, certainly you expect it to be downgraded, even if just a little bit from that aspect of the intelligence aspect of it, just because of the experience, certainly could benefit Justin Jefferson moving forward into this weekend. What could really help the Washington Commanders is Jayden Daniels returning to the field, and he is trending towards doing exactly that. He was a limited practice on Wednesday, a full participant on Thursday, and of course that had everybody all of us talking about the potential that number 5 will be back on the field this weekend for the Washington Commanders. For the record, and every day, as you already know this, I have been pointing to this Minnesota Vikings game as his return point since he injured the elbow and didn't go on IR. And, you know, I'm not some like medical genius or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to even perpetrate here. It's just the fact that if you're not putting him on IR, it's because you believe he at least has an opportunity to return within that 4-game window that he would have to miss by going on IR. This is that 4th game. Looking at the advancements in his practice, watching him practice last week, doing all those kinds of things, I was like, hey, you know what? I feel like, could he, quote unquote, go out and play against the Denver Broncos? Yeah. Is it necessarily medically smart? No. So give him another week. Let him ramp up, go to Minnesota, go indoors, play in the warm, because I do think that maybe has a little bit at least of an influence. Cold muscles or hurt muscles is the old cliche. Playing inside in the dome in Minnesota is a good opportunity for Jayden to get his first game action back from that left elbow, not playing in the frigid weather where he's going to play in MetLife and then back at Northwest Stadium for 2 games and then end the season in Philadelphia. So that's the prognosis on Jayden Daniels. Dan Quinn talked earlier this week about Jayden having to pass functional tests, right? So he hasn't been cleared for contact, but a lot of people have been kind of like really kind of focused on this cleared for contact label, but it's not like quarterbacks are getting hit. They're not thumping up. They're not hitting pads, doing all these things during the week of practice anyway. So really what it was more about, Dan Quinn said, was that functional contact, saying, quote, think of stiff arm on a bag, think of diving on the ground. It's not traditional in the sense of like taking a hit, end quote. Full participant suggests that he's cleared that hurdle a little bit. We won't talk to Dan Quinn until after Friday's practice, so we'll see how much Jayden is out there Friday, and then we'll get information. And Dan Quinn's been pretty good about being upfront and honest and transparent with us about who's going to play, who's not going to play, and their likelihood and all that kind of stuff. So Jayden Daniels chasing a little bit of history himself. We just talked about Justin Jefferson doing that. There's the 1,500 club. Jayden's not going to hit that this weekend, but he needs 347 rushing yards to join Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields as the only 2 quarterbacks with at least 1,500 rushing yards in their first 2 years. So obviously getting an opportunity to do at least some of that damage against Minnesota would help. There's a 25 and 5 tier. That's an elite tier, 25 passing TDs, 5 rushing touchdowns in multiple seasons. Only Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, and Steve Young have ever done this. Jayden Daniels trying to be a part of that club as well. The TD chase, Jayden Daniels needs to maintain his current per game scoring pace in order to become the 4th quarterback ever with 25-plus touchdown passes in each of his first 2 seasons, joining Justin Herbert, Peyton Manning, and Russell Wilson. So getting back this weekend, he can maintain his current touchdowns per pass attempt rate. Getting back next weekend, that would have to be accelerated a little bit. Obviously, Jayden and the team, not so much worried about those historic milestones as they are about just getting him healthy, getting him further developed and more experience on the playing field as early as this weekend. So we'll keep an eye on that. If Jayden Daniels can't go, of course, it'll be veteran quarterback Marcus Mariota making yet another start for the Washington Commanders. And look, last week against the Denver Broncos, we know there was that bad interception that he threw, but overall, very good performance for Marcus, very good performance for the offense as a whole. Even though when you look at it, Marcus Mariota completing less than 60% of his passes, Cliff Kingsbury calling more than 50 pass plays. So it was 50 dropbacks, or 50 pass attempts, but more than 50 dropbacks in the games. Marcus Mariota, of course, would be in line to be the starting quarterback of the Washington Commanders if Jayden Daniels can't go. Dan Quinn of Marcus Mariota coming out of that Denver Broncos game said, quote, "In some of the winning time moments, just throwing absolute dimes. I thought it was like a warrior performance at quarterback, and sometimes those are hits and you stay in, you make them," end quote. It's very important. Marcus Mariota, you know what I mean? He's a veteran. He's been in this league for a really long time. So the word development doesn't really go with Marcus Mariota, but you do see opportunities for him and moments for him to get better as a quarterback, not just as a physical quarterback, but understanding this scheme, driving this scheme, but also playing with these players. Terry McLaurin being back, again, no signs of any aggravation of the injury, no indication that he's not going to be able to go again this weekend. And I would even venture to say this weekend he wouldn't even be on a snap count limit, which he was last weekend, though he blew through that snap count limit and nearly doubled it anyway. Deebo Samuel obviously is out there. Zach Ertz is out there. Noah Brown, Dan Quinn said earlier this week, I think he called it like high green is how he feels about Noah Brown's potential to return. So expect Noah Brown back out there on field. Noah's been talking to us this week more than he has since he got injured in that week 2 game against the Green Bay Packers, was obviously a really good sign. He feels really good. And of course, you love to see him out there, one, for his receiving ability, but also the man has just a knack for drawing defensive pass interference penalties, and nothing would drive a Brian Flores defense more crazy than getting flagged for multiple defense pass interference penalties because Noah Brown's savvy. So adding him to the offense, obviously Chris Rodriguez Jr. in the running game, all those things just gives Marcus Mariota more of a platform, more weapons, more opportunity. And we finally start to get to see a little bit of what this offense was kind of supposed to be from the jump that we haven't been able to see since week 2 and not even fully through week 2 before Noah gets injured, before Jayden gets injured. And then ever since then, it's just been kind of a tailspin of who's going to play, who's not going to play, who's out, when are they going to come back. Marcus Mariota chasing a little bit of history himself. He can become just the 4th quarterback since 2000 to record at least 50 pass attempts and 10 rushing attempts in a single game. If he joining Josh Allen, Jameis Winston, and Cam Newton, if he does that again against Minnesota. Not saying that we would love to see it, but that door is open there for Marcus Mariota. What we would love to see is the Washington Commanders establishing the run to not only help the offense get stabilized, but maybe even mask some of the injuries on their defense. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Establishing the run this Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings is a potential important way the Washington Commanders can not only help the offense stabilize if Jayden Daniels can't come back, but also mask some of the defensive injuries. Washington Commanders defense already missing its top 3 edge rushers, right? Dietrich Wise Jr., Dorrance Armstrong were supposed to be your starting defensive ends. Javonte Jean-Baptiste was the 3rd man up after Dietrich Wise got injured. All 3 of those guys still out, obviously, for the year. They're missing their top 2 cornerbacks, Marshawn Lattimore, Trey Amos, out of this thing, although Mikey Sanders still has moved back outside, at least as far as last week. And personally, I think that's where he needs to stay moving forward. That'll be a discussion that we have plenty of times during the offseason, maybe even into the rest of this season. And now the potential of Bobby Wagner missing this game, depending on his practice status on Friday. And truthfully, Bobby is the kind of guy that could even come to this weekend questionable, having not practiced at all Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And because of that experience, could still play on Sunday. So that'll be something that we keep an eye on. Unless Dan Quinn comes out and says Bobby's not playing Sunday on Friday, basically we'll keep an eye on it all the way up to game time. But there is a mismatch here also to justify getting the ground game going. The Washington Commanders run game is 3rd ranked in the NFL, almost 140 yards rushing per game. Minnesota's coming in with one of the worst rushing defenses, allowing almost 130 yards per game. And yes, some of that rushing offense for the Washington Commanders has been quarterback. But listen, Marcus Mariota, I would say not nearly, but not as dynamic, not as effective as a runner as Jayden Daniels has been, or at least was last year, leading the team in rushing. Chris Rodriguez Jr. and his continued development and continued rise on this team has really helped establish the tone. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt still looks like a guy who's just kind of like waiting to bust a big one at any given moment. And Jeremy McNichols has been a really solid veteran presence for that run game. It's kind of a hammer-like strategy that goes a little bit against Cliff Kingsbury's MO, but Cliff did say, quote, about Chris Rodriguez Jr. this week, quote, he's a guy who tends to get better as the season goes on. Physical runner. The first guy has a hard time bringing him down, end quote. That's exactly the kind of guy you want to come in and set the tone against a team like the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota also has a terrible -15 turnover differential, which is the worst in the NFL. They've given the ball over 26 times this season, the most giveaways in the NFL. So this defense needs to take advantage of that, go get some of those takeaways and do some of those things, give the offense some short fields. Some milestones to keep an eye on as well. We talked about milestones throughout the entire episode, but Zach Ertz has 824 career receptions, passed Shannon Sharp last week for 5th all-time among tight ends. If he gets another 10-catch game this weekend like he did last weekend, he will pass Travis Kelce for the second most double-digit catch games by a tight end in NFL history, and then he would be 2 away from tying Tony Gonzalez for that same honor. Deebo Samuel just joined Hall of Famers Bobby Mitchell and Charlie Taylor. You might know those names as Washington legends. Only players in NFL history of 5,000 receiving yards, 1,000 rushing yards in their first 7 seasons. So he'll be looking to continue that type of trend. And Terry McLaurin needs to maintain his current pace to eventually join Torrey Holt and Brandon Marshall as the only players with at least 75 catches and 1,000 receiving yards in 6 of their first 7 career seasons. Terry McLaurin continuing to show his value to the Washington Commanders franchise. That's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we are going to come back through here with a bonus episode, talk about the final game status report, practice statuses, all that kind of stuff, player elevations for the Washington Commanders. We'll do that before Sunday when the Washington Commanders visit the Minnesota Vikings. In the meantime, if you want to get all of this information sent directly to your phone, have even further conversations with me, all you got to do is become a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders for all kinds of benefits that are only growing by the month. For your second listen, get a double dose of Locked On NFL. Get the national view of the league, but also what they think about your Washington Commanders twice per day. You can get Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast today. To the everydayers out there, those of you who come through for every single episode, I see you and I appreciate you every single day. And I thank you especially for coming through again today. For everybody out there, until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.